Mr. Speaker, the fiscal performance in the year 2024 was characterized by improved revenue collection, but with significant expenditure overruns. In addition, large arrests were accumulated over the period. Mr. Speaker, in summary, the provisional data shows the following. 1. Primary balance on commitment basis, the key fiscal anchor of the IMF program, worsened from a deficit of 0.2% of GDP at the end of 2023 to a deficit of 3.9% of GDP at the end of the year 2024. This is 4.4 percentage points worse than the target surplus of 0.5% of GDP. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, on cash basis, Mr. Speaker, the primary balance was a deficit of 1.2% of GDP against a target of 0.6% of GDP, representing a 100% deviation. Mr. Speaker, the overall fiscal balance on commitment basis for 2024 was a deficit of 7.9% of GDP against a target of 4.2% of GDP, while the overall fiscal balance on cash basis was a deficit of 5.2% of GDP against a target of 5.3% of GDP. Total revenue and grant amounted to 186.6 billion Ghana cedis, or 15.9% of GDP, 5.3% above the revised target of 177.2 billion Ghana cedis, or 17.4% of GDP. The performance was mainly driven by higher than programmed oil and gas receipts and higher non-oil tax revenue collection. Total expenditure on commitment basis, including discrepancies, amounted to 279.2 billion, or 23.7% of GDP. This is 27.1% above the budget provisions of the year 2024, Mr. Speaker. The primary balance on commitment basis, including discrepancies, amounted to 232.4 billion, or 19.8% of GDP. This is 35.3% above the target of 171.7 billion, or 16.8% of GDP. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, all expenditure lines exceeded their respective targets for the period, except for interest payments, goods and service, and other expenditures. Right Honorable Speaker, the discrepancies for the year 2024 being unclassified expenditure was 3.8 billion Ghana cedis as compared to 12.9 billion Ghana cedis in the year 2023. Mr. Speaker, at the end of December 2024, provisional data indicate that gross central government and guaranteed debt was 726.7 billion from 610 billion in 2023. This represents 61.8 billion, 61.8% of GDP in 2024, compared to 68.7% in the year 2023. Mr. Speaker, it is instructive to note that the debt to GDP ratio and the dollar component of our debt that has come down, that has reduced, is as a result of the 37% haircut on principal of Eurobond debt under the debt restructuring. Mr. Speaker, it is important to know that. Mr. Speaker, Right Honorable Speaker, it is instructive to note that the debt to GDP that has reduced is as a result of the 37% haircut on principal and interest that were given to Eurobond bondholders. Mr. Speaker, you may recall that the government commenced the debt restructuring program in the year 2022 to restore debt sustainability and economic stability. As of now, the restructuring process is approximately 93% completed. The remaining 7% relate to debt of $2.7 billion owed to commercial creditors. We are committed to completing the remaining debt restructuring as soon as possible. Mr. Speaker, real sector development in the year 2024. Right Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, provisional 2024 GDP statistics published by the Ghana Statistical Service on the 10th of March 2025 showed that overall GDP growth grew by 5.7% of GDP compared to the growth rate of 3.1% recorded over the same period. Mr. Speaker, the key driver of this growth was largely coming from gold mine, Mr. Speaker, including Galamsey. Including Galamsey. Mr. Speaker, Galamsey growth cannot be sustainable. Mr. Speaker, non-oil GDP growth. Mr. Speaker, the non-oil GDP grew by 0.6% in the year 2024, compared with a growth rate of 3.6% recorded in 2023. Mr. Speaker, the gross international reserves increased to a stock position of $8.98 billion at the end of 2024 and was enough to cover 4 months of imports, exceeding the target of a floor of 3 months of import cover. At the end of 2024, the currency had depreciated by 19.2% against the US dollars, 17.8% against the euro, against the British pound, Mr. Speaker, and it had depreciated by 13.7% against the euro.